Basic Brewing Radio is sponsored in part by the American Homebrewers Association. Want to get discounts on homebrew supplies and save money at craft breweries? Join the American Homebrewers Association and save at more than 2,300 AHA member deal locations worldwide and online. Members enjoy discounts on pints, food, and merch, and 10 to 30% off online orders. Visit homebrewersassociation.org/basicbrewing to check out the AHA member deals in your area and join the AHA. That's homebrewersassociation.org/basicbrewing to join the American Homebrewers Association to access thousands of members-only discounts. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, March 24th, 2022. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Briony Liebich from Flavor Logic gives us her top 12 tips for tasting. Briony is the founder of FlavorLogic.com and conducts training on sensory evaluation for the beverage industry. If you go to basicbrewing.com, you can find archives of our audio and video shows, and if you go to basicbrewingshop.com, you can find our DVDs and our brewers' logbooks. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Basic Brewing and find our show page on Facebook, too. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing, and many thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. The Christmas Day kettle sour beer that I brewed has had a long journey, but it's finally in the bottle. I decided to batch prime and bottle this beer because I want to see how that Brettanomyces character changes over time. The beer got down to 1.006 specific gravity, and it had a nice dusty pellicle on top of it in the fermenter. And I'm going to be checking out on checking the bottles every now and then to make sure that the Brett doesn't get too carried away with the carbonation. But I think it's low enough to be okay, though. It is a delicious little beer, and it should be fun in the summertime. Meanwhile, it's still chilly outside, and my toasted rye Doppelbock is way too tempting on tap, I'm finding. I'm going to have to stay away from it for a while. I'm losing ground on the progress that I made weight-wise during moist January, so I need to get back to focusing on the goal. Swimsuit season's coming up. It doesn't help that I have also learned how to make pretty near perfect homemade hamburger buns. So, there you go. By the time you hear this, registration for HomebrewCon in Pittsburgh in June will be open. Steve and I are planning to go. It'll be great to see people in person and taste all the great homebrew. And I miss everything about HomebrewCon. I also miss interviewing the brewers on the floor to get all the tips and tricks on how to brew all the tasty beers and finding new beers to talk about. HomebrewCon.org is where you go to register for that. Last week I teased an upcoming tea mead from our friends and sponsors Ricky and Kelly from Groenfell and Havoc Meaderies in Vermont. Well, this week I have some more details. Smoke on the Mountain is a mellow cup of tea enhanced by smoky pepper, bright hibiscus, and juicy lemon, brewed with maple-infused Merkin chili and hibiscus from folks at Runamuck Maple, then rounded out with Ceylon black tea and lemon. This unique combination makes an exquisite drinking experience for any palate. Boy, leave it up to the folks at Groenfell and Havoc to come up with something so fun and inventive. Smoke on the Mountain is under the Havoc brand, and it's now available for pre-sale at Groenfell.com. Now, this will be a single batch only, they say, limited release, and the first in a series of tea-based meads. At only 5.2% ABV, it's going to be great for quaffing in the summertime heat. Check out Smoke on the Mountain along with a wide variety of deliciously drinkable honey-based beverages at family-owned and operated Groenfell.com. That's Groennfell. Now, let's connect with Briony Liebich of Flavor Logic to get some advice on being better tasters of our favorite beverage. Briony Liebich, welcome to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thanks very much. Great to be here.
Now, first of all, we have to thank longtime friend of the podcast, John Kruger, who's a really talented photographer down in your neck of the woods, for introducing us. He sent me an email a few days ago and said, you know who you need to talk to? Briony Liebich. She's into this beer tasting thing. And so I got in touch with you, and here we are.
Yes. Thanks, John.
Well, we'll see, in half an hour if you still want to thank him for, introducing us.
Yeah. John and I have met at our local beer competition. We've both been judges.
Well, tell me about yourself. You are now the founder and owner of Flavor Logic, and that's FLAVOUR Logic. What is Flavor Logic, and what's your background in this kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. Well, my background is actually wine and wine tasting. I grew up in a winemaking family in the famous Australian wine region, Barossa Valley. So I've got a lifetime of experience in, appreciating good food and drink, and drink in moderation. Mm-hmm. From wine, I got into winery jobs. I'm drawn to sciences. And I found my way into sensory analysis through my wine experience. In the city I live, in Adelaide, Australia, there's a famous wine research institute, and I got the chance to learn all about sensory analysis using a panel of people to dig deep, describe wine in detail, aroma, flavor, mouthfeel. So I did that for a few years and wanted some industry experience. So I asked around. I'm really passionate about sensory. Love cooking, gardening, herbs and aromatherapy, all that kind of stuff to do with sensory. There was a job going at a large brewery in Adelaide, got into lab and quality work. So that's where I brought my sensory skills, transferred what I knew about wine into becoming a beer taster, beer judge, and training people to be a better taster with beer.
When I was in the corporate world, I worked for a large food company, and I signed up through the R&D department for, I volunteered for, at the beginning they call them tasting panels, but eventually they changed the name to sensory panels, and
yes.
And that's a big distinction, isn't it?
Yes, certainly. Sensory involve the whole experience. Sometimes if you just want to focus on aroma, flavor, mouthfeel, I've served lots of beer in black tasting glasses to hide the appearance. Anything you hear, see, smell, feel, huge array of things you could focus on. The whole idea of sensory is to remove distractions and biases. We all know our sensory system is quite complex and can react really quickly to things. But my approach to sensory and tasting is to be aware that, we can get easily confused. We might see, for example, with beer, you see dark colors in beers. You might assume they're a full-bodied, dark, roasty beer, but that's not always the case. So your senses are easily confused. So my number one tip is being aware, being mindful, and paying attention.
You orchestrate events with Flavor Logic, right?
Yes. In my local area, I've been doing consulting and staff training with local craft breweries, and I've just started running some events for consumers. It's kind of based on, I've become a certified Cicerone in the last year, and I use that syllabus to help transfer knowledge on not just tasting, but good beer service, storage, how to be a good consumer in the beer industry, and anyone in industry or hospitality, how to serve a proper, attractive beer.
Let's see if you can guess my least favorite comment when I tell someone to sample one of my beers. I hand them a beer and I say, "What's that taste like?" And they say,
"I like it," or "I don't like it."
They say it tastes like a beer.
Oh yes, yes.
How much of that do you get?
Well, I surround myself with people who love food and drink, in and outside of the industry. I don't get that a lot. Some of the things I do get, you get given, you get asked to choose a beer, or you always get asked, "What's your favorite beer?" But when you're in the industry, you know that anything's your favorite. The time of year or your mood, or I'm a taster. I taste everything. Keep an open mind.
Can you be a good taster or a good sensory analyst right off the bat, or does it take some practice? Does it take work?
Oh, I think it takes practice, but I think everyone can improve. And if you've practiced for a little bit, say you make the same batch of beer, or you always choose the same style of beer to make, and then someone else might taste that beer and come up with a different flavor that you have never seen. You might be blind to a particular flavor compound. That's quite common. Over time, you'll learn whether you're sensitive to bitterness or not. I really don't like the comment where people say, "I don't like beer, they all taste bitter." But you can get every range of taste in beer. I like trying to, I say you just haven't found the style that you like yet.
Now, when I taste something, like when I taste a beer, I kind of have a vocabulary ready, because I've been doing it in this kind of professional quote unquote way for a long time. And so I kind of have a vocabulary of descriptors so that I can kind of lock in, and, I'm not a certified judge or anything, but, I can describe to other beer drinkers what I'm drinking, and we can have a conversation on that. But when I switch to, say, wine, I don't think my palate's as developed, or I don't think that I have developed that vocabulary. Would that be an accurate description? I mean, do you have to taste a bunch of a certain thing in order to sort of train your brain into, finding those particular descriptors?
Yes, definitely. Yep. Tasting different styles. A really good thing I like about beer industry, you can go to a brewery or brew pub and get tasting paddles. I wish that was a bit more common in the wine industry, because I think tasting 2 or 3 products side by side is one of the best ways to learn. Our brain finds it easier to make comparative judgments. I like serving something what's called a paired comparison. It's a sensory test. I use it as a training tool, not necessarily a full-on sensory test with statistical responses. But paired comparison. You have 2 glasses. Maybe the style that you've got, and you say, well, which one is more bitter? Which one smells more hoppy? Those kinds of things are a good way to get started. And you can do a similar thing with wine. 2 white wines, which one seems more overall fruity, which one seems maybe more oaky or woody. Start with general terms, and as you build up the vocabulary, and I think it helps to taste with other people. Everyone will come up with different aromas and flavors. And as soon as someone says something, it clicks and you start looking for that flavor. I think we've all experienced that. But yeah, building up the vocabulary so you can get a bit more specific. With beer, we say malty, hoppy, fruity, but you can get way more specific than that. Dark chocolate, milk chocolate, cocoa powder are all malt-related flavors. But yeah, building up the vocabulary takes time. And if you've got practice with one type of beverage, you can transfer it to another one. And you can find flavor wheels, flavor maps. They're handy tools. I find a lot of the time when you're getting into something, but over time you work out your favorite terms and you're drawn to certain flavors.
I've found that when I'm tasting with friends, and there's just there just is a flavor that I can't put my finger on because I'm not used to tasting it in beer, but I'm used to tasting it other places.
Yes.
Like I remember the first time that I tasted a beer with diacetyl, a buttery or butterscotch. And, this is supposed to be like a pale ale or something like that. And I was tasting this and I was like, my brain was completely befuddled because I didn't know. I knew what I was supposed to be tasting, but here was this other mystery flavor that I knew what it was, or my brain, had tasted it before, but I couldn't put the words on. And then somebody finally said butterscotch. And I said, oh, yep, there you go. And so from then on, it was like a little easier to find that descriptor since I had encountered it before.
Yes, certainly. That's how it all works. The beer vocabulary, the flavor wheels help get you started. When someone maybe taste with someone a little bit more experienced, you'll pick up on someone else's descriptors, like, oh yeah, that's what it is. So yeah, the next time when you've associated a word with a particular sensation, you will remember that. So another good tip, if you really want to remember what you're tasting, is to jot down a few notes, or at least talk about it with somebody. It's like, oh, this beer has this kind of flavor or that kind of flavor. Verbalizing it in some way gives your brain a chance to kind of lock away that memory, and you build up a flavor library, if you like, in your mind.
Is that something that could work both ways? Could you accidentally talk each other into something that you're really not sensing?
Yes, that happens too. Yep. If you're kind of expecting to, maybe what happened in the brewing process, or that beer's been in your cupboard for a few months, or I don't know. Maybe something about that beer, and you're kind of having some expectation. There's an expectation bias, this week I got served a beer that I was tasting. I thought, oh, this tastes quite good, and I always check best before dates on products. That's just a habit I have because I've been involved in shelf life testing at the brewery I worked at. This beer was past its best before date, and so I kind of assumed, or maybe that's been in that can for 12 months, but it didn't seem as oxidized. So if I'd known it was past its best before date before I tasted it, I would have, wrote more negative comments about that beer, and told myself there was caramelization and, a sweeter note or a flat note. But yeah, I hadn't had that information beforehand, which was good. I think it's good to taste without knowing too much about the particular product. Don't go looking at websites or beer review websites until you've had a taste yourself. But yeah, you can get extra information from that. And as you're tasting, if you look at someone else's review, that's a good way to learn as well.
I want to brag again this week about our friends Desiree and Dave from High Gravity and Pippin's Tap Room in Tulsa. And Amanda and Tim and everybody who brews over there, they took 5 medals and an honorable mention at this year's Oklahoma Craft Beer Awards. It's amazing, but not surprising. Among those are gold for Center of the Universe IPA, gold for Legend of El Dorado NEPA, bronze for G6 Belgian Strong Ale, and honorable mention for Black Cat's IPA, which is a black IPA. And you know what all those have in common, all those delicious beers? You can find kits for them at highgravitybrew.com. One of the benefits of having a homebrew shop and a tap room is that you can develop award-winning beers by serving them to the public, tweaking them as you go along, and then you turn them into homebrew ingredient kits that you can ship across the country. And can't forget that the Word Hog electric systems at highgravitybrew.com can take the pain out of propane. Whether it's 5 gallons up to 2 barrels, brew in a bag setup like mine or Steve's, or a 2 or 3 vessel setup, use the code EBC75BB to save $75 off your Word Hog purchase and pick up an award-winning beer kit while you're at it at highgravitybrew.com. That's highgravitybrew.com. I went to your site, flavorlogic.com, and I downloaded your 12 top tasting tips. And I'm wondering if you would give us some details on each of these tips, as we go along. Are you willing to expound on your tips?
Certainly, yes.
Number 1, be a mindful eater and drinker.
Yeah, you can use the term mindful or just be aware, pay attention. All of those things are taking as being similar in terms of tasting something. So, it's not just diving in, having a sip straight away or, a mouthful, whatever. First use your eyes, ears, nose, mouth, all around your mouth. You've got taste buds and a lot of people just talk about flavor, but flavor is mostly aroma and a combination of aroma and flavor. When you start paying attention, you really notice, well, I'm smelling this, but I might be tasting something different. There might be a lingering aftertaste that you might notice after a few more sips. So just kind of paying attention, maybe talk about it with someone else. And then also being aware that you as a person, you're different to the person tasting next to you. As I mentioned before, you might be blind to a certain compound that you kind of learn over time. We've all got different cultural backgrounds and experiences. I've worked with, I've given some isolated aroma samples to a group of people, things like aniseed essence. And if no one has ever experienced aniseed or licorice or those kinds of things, they could not put a name to this aroma. I kind of assumed it was a common thing people might know, but people of an Asian background had never experienced aniseed. All these factors. I don't want to make it sound too complex, but just being aware that what you smell and what someone else smell could be different. Yeah.
And sometimes carbonation level or temperature can have an impact on beer flavor. So it'd be useful to note those as well. Things that you wouldn't necessarily connect with flavor itself, but those things are important too.
Yes, certainly. So a lot of beers might be served quite cold, so you won't be able to smell them straight away. So your aromas might come later as you've halfway down the glass and the beer's a bit warmer. The foam has helped release some more aromas. So just being aware. You don't always get to smell the beer first, but just go back and take notice of that. Yep.
Number 2 is be curious.
Yes. So, curiosity, just thinking if you smell a flavor like coffee, maybe think, well, what do I know about what's gone into this beer? What kind of roasted malt was in there? Is the coffee, fresh or like really dark espresso style, or just a light coffee, or maybe mixed with a bit of chocolate? So just try and think, well, if there's a particular flavor, where could that have come from? I like teaching people about the raw materials of the beer ingredients, which everyone knows is very important as home brewers and brewers. So yeah, thinking about where could that have got there, a bit like a sensory detective. Mm-hmm. And that helps, it helps stimulate your senses, and it goes with the first tip of just being aware. So, oh, how did that get there? Maybe you find out the hops that have been used, from the brewery website or something, and then you might associate, well, I get, berries with that kind of hop, or tropical notes, things like that.
It's especially useful. We're doing a series on recipe development, and once you brew your beer and you're trying to refine your recipe, this is the kind of approach that would really help you on the next step.
Yes. And another part to that is maybe tasting in a different way to usual. Order a different beer style, or get a tasting paddle, or use some different glassware at home. Just mix things up, become a bit curious. What if I taste this beer next to that beer, or the same beer in two different glasses? Just mini little tasting experiments. Just keeps the senses stimulated.
Number 3 is something that we've kind of covered already. Build your sensory memory.
Yes, that's right. In all the sensory panel work I've done, training panels, I've played around with lots of spices and fruits and herbs. I've put isolated things in glasses with the lids on them. I often prepare, I've got some little brown glass jars. I put things like, crushed up peppercorn, or crushed up cloves, a few pieces of grass or something. Things you might hear about in the beer industry, or you've seen on a flavor map, and you think, oh, what does grapefruit smell like? How does it compare to lime? Next time you're in the kitchen or in the supermarket, get some different things to try, and just smell them on their own. So over time, this builds up your sensory memory, and you'll associate the aroma with the word, and that'll help with your descriptors and vocabulary.
Every time I'm at a salad bar and I get near the pineapple, I get thirsty for a West Coast American IPA. So,
yeah,
I've sort of accidentally trained my brain in that way. Number 4 is keep an open mind.
Yes, I think I've touched on this a few times as well already. So in terms of tasting, this is like what I said before, try to taste without knowing too much about the beer. Maybe you could have some beers in the fridge, get someone else to pour them for you, or not read the label, not look up the website first. Some people I've seen like to close their eyes to really, when they're really sniffing and getting aromas, trying to put a name to an aroma. I've seen that work. But yeah, just resist having any preconceived ideas. Try not to expect what you're going, this style of beer should taste like this. You might miss an interesting flavor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's especially
or a defect.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yes.
And
yes.
And going back on the previous point, don't forget to familiarize yourself with the defects, not just the good things that you should be smelling or tasting, but the defects as well.
You could get a can of corn, smell a bit of the liquid in there, and that's a DMS example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or butter buttered popcorn is a really good one for diacetyl because they often use diacetyl to make that flavor.
Yep. And most people have a bit of vinegar at home. That's I've in my job at a brewery, we had to deal with customer complaints, and samples of kegs were returned to the brewery for us to taste in the sensory team. And acetic was common. That came from infected lines, not the beer that left the brewery, but yes, it made me realize how much of an issue there is at the service end as well.
This tastes bad. Here, try it.
Interestingly, a consumer tends to just say, "Oh, it tastes off." It tastes off. Off and flat were the two biggest complaints I've seen in this large Australian brewery. And off. Yeah, it could be anything, but yeah, we was like, oh, that's an infected keg or infected tap lines. Yep.
Number 5 is focus on the details at hand.
Yes. So kind of right back to the top one, be aware, isolate what you see, what you smell, what you taste, and also not trying to guess what it is. If you had 2 or 3 beers, you don't have to necessarily guess which one was which brand. Just try to, if you're really trying to hone in and be a better taster, think, which one is a bit more malt forward, or, which can I rank these in bitterness, or, is one got a really lingering flavor or something? So just what's in the glass. If you start thinking about, which brand could it be, or maybe this beer is a bit old, getting a bit tired. That all can help. It confuses you a bit more. Focus on the details at hand. Try to limit things that could bias your perceptions.
Being a good taster, being a good sensory analyst, it's hard. It sounds like a lot of fun, and I've judged a handful of competitions, and I don't think I'm very good, but it is hard work.
It's a lot of concentration, and I was thinking about it the other day. A full day of a beer judging competition, you could taste 50 different beers, and you have to write tasting notes for every single one. That's not for everybody. And you can't write, they're all multi-hoppy, bitter. It's, you got to be pretty specific. Yeah.
Smooth is a good one. Just use that one all the time.
Balanced bitterness.
Well, number 6 goes along with that. Give your senses a break.
Yes. If this really applies if you've got a few samples to get through. May not happen when you're tasting at home all the time, but your senses are easily confused. So just pause. If you've got lots of samples, make sure there's some water and some cracker biscuits and things like that. And just remember at different times of day, or your mood, or whether you've eaten something or not, that all affects your sensory ability. You actually perform better earlier in the morning, earlier in the day, before a meal. A common time for a sensory panel to work is 10, 11 a.m., a few hours before lunchtime. That's a common time for a panel to work. Your senses seem to be the sharpest.
I'm on the search for what to brew next. I've got 2 lagers on tap and a sour in the bottle. Whatever I brew, I know it's going to be with yeasts from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Organic Yeast. My lagers were brewed with L26 Pilgrimage from Imperial, which was the winter seasonal. Super clean yeast. That was very happy in my chilly basement. My kettle sour beer was finished with W15 Suburban Brett, and it has a very nice level of Brettanomyces funk that I hope will evolve over time. Imperial Organic Yeast boasts a pitch rate of 200 billion cells in each easy-to-open package. My stir plate is dusty because I just don't use it anymore to make starters for moderate gravity 5-gallon batches, and my airlocks are usually bubbling before bedtime. And you've heard on the show how their top-notch technical support can give you advice if something does go wacky with your fermentation. Ask your local homebrew store about Imperial Organic Yeast and check them out at imperialyeast.com. That's imperialyeast.com. Number 7, take meaningful notes.
Yes, so writing things down helps your brain click into gear, and you'll help remember what you maybe liked or didn't like about the beer. If you're getting more serious about it, you might have your own little personal scoring system, 1, 2, or 3 star system. Maybe 1 is, it's an okay beer. 2 is pretty good, acceptable quality. 3 is, I like it. I want to share it with friends. I don't know what other people do. But just actually writing, or maybe you've got a notebook in your mobile phone. That's what I use these days. If I'm out at a pub and I'm concentrating on comparing a few beers and a paddle, I'll take a few quick notes while I'm there.
And that helps maybe in documenting your impressions before somebody else talks you out of them a little later on.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. You're analyzing your own perceptions. Yeah.
Number 8 is take adequate samples.
Yes. Well, this is just something I've noticed. If you're having a group of samples, or maybe you got through your beer before your friend and you've got none left to compare and taste and talk about. So just leave a little bit if you were in an environment where you're tasting and talking in a little group or something. Leave room to talk about it, and also maybe think about how the aromas might have changed, as the beer has warmed up. Things like that.
Yeah, it's always sad when you're drinking a special beer and it's that last swallow that's the best of it. Oh no. It could have all tasted like this.
Or you've got something really good, or even something maybe a defect, and you want someone else to taste it and experience it, pour a bit in their glass. Don't drink it all to yourself if it's really, really good.
Number 9 is taste widely, trying new things.
Yes. So kind of with number 2, be curious, be open to trying styles and foods and things you may not have experienced or wouldn't normally order. Be open to discovering new flavors and experimenting different ways of, eating and drinking.
Yeah, I like going to like the homebrewers conference here in the United States, and going to club night and pro night, where there are lots and lots of beers being served, or going to a beer festival and trying different things and discovering, new flavors and inspirations. It's the best way to expand your horizons, so to speak.
Yeah, and in terms of home brewing, of course, I've seen in some of your videos, add some different flavors, play with rosemary or lavender, or some fruit puree you might have in season. Try a different supplier or a recipe that you haven't tried before, that kind of thing.
Number 10 is something that would irritate my wife, Susan. Stick to your guns and slurp when you sip.
Yes. So this kind of comes back to having a consistent tasting technique. So I've got another downloadable form on my website, which has got the rundown of a beer tasting technique and how to do a paired comparison. But yeah, whether you call it slurp or not, maybe your slurp is just always swirling your beer, or I've been noticing lately, every time I take a sip, I swirl a bit around my mouth. I think that helps me determine the body of a beer, kind of how heavy it feels in my mouth. Is it watery or full and viscous? So swirl, slurp, all those kinds of things. Just be consistent. It helps the sample warm up in your mouth, which will release more flavour, and you'll be able to notice more and enjoy more.
And it seems to be like, especially, beer, unless something's terribly wrong, is not hot. But, say, tasting coffee, especially, just bringing some air in with what you're drinking seems to open it up a bit more.
Yes. And I've over the years, I've become experienced judging for wine, beer, cider, and olive oil. And the temperature of olive oil is critical. Every judge warms up the sample in their hand, covers a little cup, that really has to warm up. Judging olive oil is a lot harder than beer. I can tell you.
I can imagine. It seems like there'd be a whole lot more delicate characteristics that you'd be trying to discover there.
But interestingly, as I got more and more into beer, there are very, very similar hop characters that you get in olive oil. Lots of isoamyl acetate, grassy, tropical, passion fruit, citrus. I've had incredible flavors in olive oil that I find similar to what I've had with hops. Yeah. Grassy and lots of things. And slurping, I think maybe a bit more with products maybe like wine and this and olive oil. The slurp is a bit more important. Beer doesn't have as high alcohol where you need to get all the volatiles out. But just use a consistent tasting technique is the message there.
Number 11 is rely on first impressions.
Yes, this is what a sensory analyst tells people all the time, especially if you're presenting a flavour test. Maybe you've spiked a control beer with some different flavours, and there's a definite answer with these things, and people will sit there and get confused and keep sniffing and keep tasting, but do not have too many tastes. If you know you're sitting in a taste test, rely on your aroma most of all, and small sips is just to help confirm what you smelt. But just any time you take too many sniffs, take too many sips, you're saturating your senses, and you can just overload the sensory system. So then you'll become blind and not notice things at all. So first impressions are always the best.
Yeah, that goes along with, as we were talking about earlier with the judging and palate fatigue. The freshest, that first sip is going to be the freshest on your palate.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Number 12, to round out the dozen, have something to say when discussing product characteristics. Is that have something, say something nice or don't say anything at all? Or
no, not necessarily. Just, if you're really getting into tasting, you're not just, having a pint at the pub. Have something to say. Think, well, it's kind of like giving maybe you've broken down the beer, you've looked at it, you've smelt it, you've tasted it, had a few sips, you've noticed lacing on the glass maybe. It's kind of like giving a overall impression. Whether you write it down or you just think to yourself, did I like that beer? What did I like about it? Is that beer consistent to the last batch of beer I made that was like that? How has this beer changed over time? When I first had it, those kinds of things. So it's kind of wrapping up your tasting note, let's say, and giving an overall impression.
Now, what do your events look like? I mean, what do you, if someone were to walk into one of your events, what would we see?
Yeah, the kind of things I've talked about here. I like to help isolate some of the senses, get you practicing aroma. I put some things in jars and get people to describe them. I don't give any hints. I'm a bit cruel, but they're usually related to the beer samples I'm serving later. Maybe there's a bit of lemon peel or an essence that smells like rose or crushed up cloves, things like that. Beer flavors. So yeah, there's an aroma. Name that aroma exercise. When there's time, I like to give people pure tastes in water, all the basic tastes. And with beer, you can often get some, or not often, hopefully not often, metallic or astringent or, things like that. I've got little compounds I can put in water or beer to get people assessing basic tastes. And I do a paired comparison. Sometimes I serve them in black glasses to hide any appearance factor. So it just gets you concentrating on aroma and flavour straight away. And yeah, like introducing people to a couple different beer styles. For your ales, for your lagers, Belgian ale, that kind of thing. But yeah, if it's for a particular brewery, I'll focus on their beers, and they get their staff. Hopefully it's staff from bar service, brewery production, maybe sales and marketing as well. Everybody needs to learn more, and it's often rare that everyone gets together and tastes like that as a team. Mm-hmm. I find that's a really useful way to help level up everyone's beer education. The brewer, can help educate the others as well, and throw in some common off flavors, oxidation and maybe some light struck, some diacetyl. It depends how much time there is and what people are interested in.
If there's a brewery, say here in the United States or in other areas far away from you, or homebrew clubs or things like that, do you work on a consulting basis, long distance, to help people set these kinds of things up themselves?
Yes. I'm slowly getting into that. I believe that's a big it's a big opportunity. So I'm working on how to help maybe put together, download tasting packs with a few methods and maybe a few Zoom meetings, things like that. Yeah.
Well, excellent. Flavorlogic.com, again, FLAVOUR, logic.com. And I was expecting this to be fun, and it was. And again, thanks to John Kruger for setting us up, and I appreciate all the information.
Yes, beer tasting is fun.
It's work, but it's good, fun work.
A lot of people say, am I analysing beer all the time? The answer is no. I can switch on tasting mode and switch it off. There's tasting mode and drinking mode.
Excellent. Thanks, Briony.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to chat.
Well, thanks again to Briony. Next time, Steve and I have a tincture sampler. I want to have her tasting tips on hand there, so it doesn't hurt to study up, have a little refresher before we jump in there just willy-nilly tasting those tinctures. Hey, it'll be the top 12 tasting tips for tipples with tinctures. Totally. It took me a little while to come up with that. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. So until next time, until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.